Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tamassaka bi sunnatihi ila yawm ad-din, amma ba'd, fa inna asdaq al-hadithi kitabullah wa khairul hadi hadi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I commence in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, send salutations of prayers and peace upon the finality of prophets and messengers, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, upon his family, his companions, and all who follow him in righteousness until the day of judgment. Indeed, the best speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah ta'ala, we have a wonderful guest today, inshallah ta'ala. And Mark, I forgot to remind you, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be streaming through my pages because I have a few pages and this system allows me to stream through 4 different pages. And then we're going to go ahead and upload everything to the WhyIslam page, inshallah ta'ala, because if we stream there, we won't be able to stream everywhere else, inshallah. So you can find it there, inshallah, if you want to share. So we have, mashallah, a wonderful guest with us, my brother Mark Brisson, alhamdulillah, who has an amazing journey, an amazing story, alhamdulillah. He was in the military, alhamdulillah. Then, mashallah, he studied, the Christianity, the faith, and then, alhamdulillah, he found Islam while in the military. He ended up becoming a Muslim. He's studying Islam now, alhamdulillah. And, mashallah, he's actually in Morocco at the time, mashallah, right now, sitting back, quarantined in beautiful Morocco, alhamdulillah, with his wife, inshallah ta'ala, enjoying his time there, inshallah ta'ala, with his family, inshallah. So let's just jump right in, Mark, inshallah ta'ala, commence, telling us about your amazing journey, inshallah ta'ala.
First, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I can't even talk right now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great an honor, a privilege. It's a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I am able to be here today. Thanks to WhyIslam, being able to speak with you, tell you a little bit about my story. So I was born United States in just outside of New York City in the state of New Jersey. Born there, lived there my entire life. I was born to a really good, tight-knit Roman Catholic family. My father, he's the director of music in the Roman Catholic Church there, small town called Califon. It's the Roman Catholic community of St. John Neumann. And so my family and everything have always been very involved our entire life, music ministry, involvement with the church. My mother, my father, they taught religious education for a while. So we're very involved. We did a lot with the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts. I spent my whole life doing Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, all the way up until high school when I was just about to graduate, and never quite made it to Eagle Scout, but alhamdulillah, it was the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my story, right? So everybody's asking me, how did you come? How did you find out about Islam? Where did this come from? And so my journey really starts probably when I was about 10 years old. I was in elementary school, and we were studying world geography. And the teacher, she had one of these old carousel slides, and it would go click, clink, click, clink, click, clink, and the slide would drop down, it would show it, and then we go click, clink, and it would change it to another photo. So it's not the digital computer stuff that we have today. Not that I want to date myself here or anything, but we're studying world geography, right? And so we get to this one picture. We're talking about the Middle East. And it shows the picture of Mecca and the Kaaba and just the beautiful ornateness of it. And I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. That's amazing. Wow. And here I am, like 10 years old. I'm like, that's absolutely beautiful. That's amazing. I'm like, I raised my hand to the teacher. I'm like, I want to go there. I want to go there. I want to see this. And I remember so clearly the teacher, right? She's like, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but Christians and Jews and everything can't go. Nobody can go. Only Muslims are allowed to go into Mecca and see the Kaaba. And I will never forget this day because I was sitting in the classroom, left-hand side. It was a beautiful sunny day. The sun was coming in. It was nice. And when she told me this, I just started, I got tears in my eyes. I cried because here was something so beautiful. This place called Mecca, this structure called the Kaaba. It was just so beautiful that I literally had tears in my eyes. I wanted to go see it so bad. And when she told me I couldn't go see it, I was like, I was heartbroken. I was so sad. I was like, that's not fair. It's not fair. Why is it that only Muslims can go? That's not fair. So it was. So for me, that was like the very first spark, the moment that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, I didn't realize at the time, but started putting something inside of me. And subhanallah, like, where they're talking about, Muslims, they have this prophet, his name is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's the prophet of the Muslims. And I was like, okay, yeah. And my entire life, I always believed, Muhammad, always believed he was a prophet. Always believed he was a prophet and messenger of God. Never had the slightest doubt. Because how can you have a religion of almost 2 billion followers worldwide for more than 1,400 years and is still growing at an unexplicable number, a rate? It's just beyond comprehension. Only a prophet of God can do this. And here I was 10 years old. I'm thinking, like, he's a prophet of God. There's no question about that. So, alhamdulillah, I can say to a certain aspect, I've always been a Muslim in my heart. I just really never knew about it, And back in the day, this is back in the 80s and 90s when they're teaching you all this stuff. In the United States, nobody knows about Islam. Nobody knows what Islam is. All they get there is most of the times, like, you couldn't even go to the internet and Google, because Google, it didn't even exist. So it's so the teachers just took what they had from their books, which came from their books, which at that time, most of the books were like 30, 40, 50 years old anyway, from the early 1900s. So, so a lot of the information itself was not even exact and correct, but, alhamdulillah, it was that first sparks that started entering. So what really kind of like, that was kind of like the spark that kind of put like Islam there, but it was always like hidden very deep in my heart. And it was like a whole series of life-changing events. When I was about 14 years old, I was in the 8th grade. It was winter time, just before Christmas, and I ended up getting really sick. It was on a Friday, and I just didn't feel well. I thought I had the flu and something like that. And so I decided, I always love to go outside, do stuff outside. So it was like lightly snowing. So I decided, all right, I'm going to go outside and start splitting firewood, for the house. So I go outside, cut a couple logs of firewood, and I'm like, man, I'm just not feeling well. I just feel sick. So I come back inside. My mom made me some homemade chicken soup just because I was not feeling well. And by midnight, I was in so much pain. It felt somebody was taking my body and ripping and tearing my body in half. And it was so bad, I was vomiting blood. And it was at that point in time where my mom said, listen, something's seriously wrong. You're vomiting blood. We need to get to the hospital now. So we went to the hospital. Doctors started hooking up all these machines and all these tests and everything like that, trying to figure out, like, we don't know what's going on here, what's going on. So the doctor said, all right, we got to bring him into emergency exploratory surgery to see what's going on. So they said, the doctors brought me in there. They put me under. First, I look over, I see all these shiny silver instruments. I said, oh my God, I'm going to die. And that's the last thing I remember. And then the next thing I remember is waking up completely dizzy, not knowing anything what's going on in the recovery room. And I couldn't even move. I couldn't move. It was like somebody like plastered my stomach together. And it was a little bit after the doctor said, man, you are so lucky. Like, I have never seen anybody in my life survive what happened. And he said, what happened is my appendix ended up rupturing. And not only did it rupture, but it spread infection throughout my entire abdominal cavity called peritonitis. And they said it extended all the way up underneath under my lungs, all my entire cavity. They said as soon as they started cutting open the abdomen, all just pus and bacteria and infection just started flowing out. So they had to remove like a lot of the internal organs just to wash it, clean it, and put it back in. So the doctor said, it's just a mercy and blessing of God, because I've never seen anybody survive. By all means, you should be dead. There's no explanation as to why you're still living right now. It's like, you must have a guardian angel with you, because by all means, you should be dead. So for me, I spent 3 months sick with mononucleosis. So I was sick at home with mono from all of this infection. And up until that point, I had never been a really good student. I'll be honest with you. I was a terrible student. I hated homework. I hated studying. I just wanted to go play with my Legos. I wanted to go be outside. I had no interest. Like, you give me mathematics, I'm like, yeah, okay, 1 + 1 = 1. Okay, we're fine, we're good. um, but because I always had problems with attention and focus and everything like that. And alhamdulillah, it was a blessing of Allah, such a beautiful blessing, because I spent 3 months at home. I was living in my grandparents' house because my parents were working full time. So my grandmother was there every day, taking care of me all day long, all night long. And my teachers, may God bless them, they came to the house and actually taught me in the house just so I could stay with my class. And subhanAllah, that was such a life-changing event for me, because I went from getting D's and F's to being ahead of the class with A's and B's. And it was a moment for me, it's like, wow, like, I have the intellect, I can do anything. Like, I actually have a brain. I can actually think, like, I'm actually I just might be a little bit smart. So it was an amazing, it was a real morale booster for me, just having these teachers and everybody come into the house and sit with me one by one. And that year I graduated with honors in mathematics. So I went from literally D's and F's to graduating with honors in mathematics for that school year, going into high school. It was just an incredible experience. So from there, I became very involved. Because I always done a lot of community service with Boy Scouts and everything, I got very involved with the first aid squad. So I ended up getting a real passion for medical. So I went out, I actually got my EMT certification while I was in high school, and I was riding on the first aid squad. And there are times, like even during the day during high school, I would actually go out and take emergency EMT calls. Which was pretty cool. I was like the only one in my entire senior class. I was the only one who had a special ticket. Like, hey, I can go anytime I want to. That was pretty cool. But yeah, so it was a pretty awesome experience, especially getting out there, helping people in times of emergencies when literally their life is in your hands. You know, it's a single mistake could, save them or lose them. Of course, everything is ultimately up to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but just having somebody there, just having that impact, and just having so many people just, say thank you so much, helping people and everything, and just seeing all the good. It was just an incredible experience. So from there, right in the end of my senior year in high school, there was a day, it was snowing, it was winter, it was like the year right before it's like 6 months before, it was the winter. So I was driving down the road, going to work. I was working in a doctor's office at the time, and snowing. I was driving my old 1984 Ford station wagon, which was like a battle tank. It was just a steel beast. Like, you could drive this thing for anything, right? So I'm driving here. I'm like, yeah, I'm invincible. I'm 18 years old, 17 years old. Nobody can touch me. This weather, ha 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 ha. All of a sudden, a piece of ice caught the front of my tire. My car spun 180 degrees and went sideways right into a telephone pole. And where that pole hit was just in front of the driver's side door, just forwards. And had that, and that telephone pole, when I hit it, it actually sheared the telephone pole in half, so it was just dangling there with nothing supporting it. And prior to that, all the other poles had been replaced except that one. That was one of the old original poles that was all rotted. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Had I been just 1 foot difference, that pole would have gone right into my door. And had it been one of the ones replaced, I would not be speaking here today. I would have been dead. So again, that was another eye-opening moment. Like, thanks be to God. Alhamdulillah, Allah protected me and kept me safe and kept me alive. And it's just, when you have an experience like that, of course you're shaken. It's a surprise, but you really start to think like, wow, okay, I know they say a cat's got 9 lives, but I'm starting to use up my lives here. So when I was going to graduate high school, one day I got a phone call from this guy, Sergeant Bobrowski from the U.S. Marines. He's like, I'm Sergeant Bobrowski. I'm from the U.S. Marine Corps. See here, you're in high school. I'd kind of like to know if you're interested in the Marines. And I'm like, nah, I'm really not interested, but thanks. But I was like, I didn't want to say no, I'm not interested, but thank you so much for your time. I was like, yeah, I wanted to be nice. I was like, okay, you know what? I'll let him give his spiel. I'll let him speak to me, and then I'll tell him like just to make him feel good, and they'll be like, thank you so much, but no, I'm really not interested. Well, sure enough, there it was. I said, okay, yeah, sign me up. I was like, oh, that went out the window. So much for telling him I was not interested. Yeah, sure. Tell me where to sign. So at the time, I was actually 17 years old when that happened, and so I actually had my parents had to sign a waiver for me to join the Marines. So I had my parents. One day, the recruiter comes over and introduces himself, and my mom and my dad, they're like beside myself, like, "What are you doing? My God, Mark! Like, they're gonna kill you! Like, what are you thinking? Like, why can't you do anything else? Like." Go into the Peace Corps. Why can't you go into, go into the Air Force? Go into do something, do anything. Just don't go into the military, right? They're like, oh my God, and the Marines. You're going into the Marines? Are you crazy? Like, they're crazy. so so the sergeant, he was like, don't worry, you're gonna start off in the reserves. The reserves never go any place. The reserves, if any wars happen, they hang back, they relax. All the active duty guys go overseas. Nobody goes overseas. And it was back in 98, 97, 97. And of course, the Gulf War was 91. And so there was like, and it was peaceful, it was quiet, there was no expectations, there was no nothing. This is all pre 9/11. So it's like, okay, yeah, got nothing to worry about. So it's like, okay, so my parents agreed and say, all right, let's sign up for the Marines. And that was actually like one of the most incredible experiences in my life, because it really taught a lot of self-discipline. It taught a lot about how to interact with people, how to really carry myself, how to speak strong, how to, and most significant is overcome my fears. For me, I always had this incredible fear of just like going out and talking to people and talking in public, and it really taught me how to overcome every obstacle that came my way, and came about it and just go right at it and not be afraid, and just whatever happens, happens. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, everything is good. And so it really helped form a lot of my character. And then I'll never forget the day that September 11th came around. And it was a very shocking moment. It was my first day at work working for Verizon Wireless. I was up in Morristown, New Jersey. And I was up there in Morristown, New Jersey for Verizon Wireless, and it was in their HR office right when the planes hit, and I was with their HR manager. And I'll never forget, everything just like happened. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Everybody starts talking. I'm like, what's going on? And they said, they turned the monitor, the computer, they had CNN, and they're looking, it's like, and you see the plane fly into the building. And her office had a window, and I just look out the window, and I could just see the smoke all the way in the background in New York City, the smoke coming up. Here I am looking at a TV, here's seeing the smoke and going, oh my God. And I'll never forget, because when out of this person's mouth, the HR manager, was, oh my God, I have international stocks. I have to call my stockbroker. And for me, that was just like, it just tough. Like I couldn't imagine. Like, here you have this giant event coming on, and you're worried about your stocks. You're worried about your international. You have people, like, how many thousands of people in these buildings, um, and then the thought came to my mind, like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like, oh my God, there's a chance they're gonna call me. And sure enough, later on that day, they called asking for volunteers to go into Ground Zero to help. And a lot of the guys went in there, and they said it was beyond, just the devastation. It was just beyond imagination. I'll never forget a commanding officer in our first sergeant. He said, get ready, because something's gonna happen. USA is not going to let this go and just say this is a terrorist event. They say, get ready, because we're going to war. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, Afghanistan happened. And alhamdulillah, I was not involved with the Afghanistan offensive, but the big offensive for Iraq in 2003. And so I was with the Marine Corps Bridge Company, 6 engineers, 4th Engineer Support Battalion, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we were all combat engineers. Our job was working with explosives, construction, demolitions, landmines, doing all of those things, bridge construction, you name it, we did it. And I said, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, pack your bags, pack your bags, pack your bags, make sure you have your will ready, make sure you have your last testament ready, make sure you have your power of attorney ready. And that was a terrifying moment. That was absolutely. Uh, um, and one of the things that they said is, don't expect everybody to come home. You know, there's going to be some of you here, some of your friends are not coming home. You're going to come home in a body bag. It was that actually, what's out of me. That was just thinking about going up for knowing that some of your friends who are with you right now are not going to come home. And that really hit hard. When we flew into Kuwait, we flew into Kuwait City, March, and our airplane was flying, and then all of a sudden, I swear, that plane just turned and went literally straight down. Like, it descended so fast, you could take a penny, hold that penny over your hand, and that penny would stay in midair. That's how fast that plane was coming down. It was like literally we were just floating in air. That's how fast. But here I was thinking, oh my God, something's happened. We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. And then the next thing I know, all of a sudden the plane just turns flat. Everybody feels like, oh, we just sit in our seat, and ended like that. And they said, yeah, there were Scud missiles that were flying in the air, and they were doing an emergency combat landing. And after, all of a sudden, we got off the plane, and all of a sudden we hear sirens going off left and right, and everybody screaming, incoming missiles, get your gas mask. And so we're on our gas masks and everything, scared to death that we're gonna get gassed and die to death. So it was horrifying experiences of my entire life. And my unit, we were one of the first groups to go across the Iraqi border. We went from Kuwait into Iraq, going up to Nasra, and then north we made our way up to Al-Quds. And it was, I think, probably the first 3 days I was there, I did not sleep one time. I literally spent, it was about almost 4 days without any sleep. Just because there's so much adrenaline, so much fear, so much everything. And absolutely 100% convinced I'm not coming home alive. I am coming home in a body bag. They're just going to pick up pieces of me, put me in a bag, and send me home to my family. And my family's just going to get, sorry for your loss. Here are the remains of your son. I was 100% convinced. And there were times where I was literally I would literally beg and cry. I would cry to God, please, just let me live long enough to see one more sunset. And if you take my life, if I get blown to pieces, if I die, then I can die in peace, because thank you, you gave me my wish just to see that last sunrise. Because for anybody who has ever seen the sunrise or the sunset in a desert, by Allah, to see the sun rise in the desert and see the sunset is the most beautiful setting of the sun you could ever think. If you think it's beautiful looking at the sunset at the ocean, seeing it in the middle of the desert, the Iraqi desert, is 1,000 times, and so here I was crying, I was begging, God, please, dear God, please, let me live long enough to our sunrise. One more sunrise, and if you kill me in the day, if I step on a mine, if somebody shoots me in the head, if I get blown to pieces, At least I can die in peace because thank you. And I cried to God. I cried to God just to live, just to live, just a little bit more time, just a few more hours. And if you kill me, peace. And I'll never forget, there was one time we were in south in Iraq, and it was this area, we were staying at a place called Camp Anderson. And it was somewhere between Al Qut and it was the middle of the desert. And it was in the early morning hours, just before it just passed Fajr, because subhanallah, the desert of Iraq in a Muslim country, subhanallah, it is so, when you hear that call of adhan, you know what time it is. Subhanallah, it's beautiful. Like, and when you're there in that environment and you just hear that call of adhan throughout the desert lands, subhanallah, it's so beautiful to hear, because that's something you don't hear in the United States. And to hear it was like, wow, that's kind of nice, and so we would sometimes, a lot of times, judge our time of the day by that. And I'll never forget. The sun was just rising. It hadn't come over the horizon yet, but the sky was this beautiful orange and reds and blues and all different colors, and caught my attention, right? And so I looked down at the ground, and I scoop up the ground in front of me like this, and I just look at it. And in my hand, what I'm looking at, maybe like 3, 4 away from any water, any ocean, anything, I scoop up. All I see are hundreds of these little seashells and sea drills, and it was like literally like I was at the beach, and I scooped up the sand at the beach, and here were all these seashells, just beautiful, just there in this desert, this area with nothing around, and I was like, subhanallah, how amazing. And uh, I had a feeling, it was instant tranquility. I felt the presence of Isa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam. It was like literally I had Musa and Isa and Ibrahim put their arm onto my shoulder, hug me and put my arm, and this feeling of telling me, don't worry, you have nothing to worry about. Everything's going to be okay. And in that exact moment, all fear, all worry, all gone. Instant, gone. It's like every tear, every fear, everything in my heart that I was like, I'm going to die, gone. Instant, gone. Just absolute peace and tranquility. Like that. Like, so, like, faster than you can snap your finger. And it was the most incredible experience. It was just instant tranquility, and that feeling lasted with me that entire time. And there were so many times I can't even count, where we had incoming mortars, we had incoming rocket fire, we had incoming fire that, by all means, I should not be alive. By all means, there's no reason why I should be here, because I saw so many of my friends killed, IEDs, friends shot in the head, so many who I've seen die right there in front of me, and yet I'm still here living. Why are you keeping me alive? And that's when I really started to go back and reflect, and I'm like, you know what? For all of these times when I was in high school, I should have died. When I was in elementary school, I should have died. Here I am in Iraq. I should die. I should not be living. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like you say, a cat's got 9 lives. The saying goes, a cat's got 9 lives, man. I'm working on like 15 or 20 lives here. I'm in the negative. Like I used up all my surplus, and I'm in the negative. And that's why I say, like, even sometimes, like, if I was given the option to live my life over 1,000 times more, not sin once in that entire life, if I became sheikh, priest, cardinal, whoever, whatever figure, not sin once, it would take more than not even 1,000 lives of just continuous good deeds. Not 1,000 lives would be enough to give gratitude to Allah for me still being alive today. Um, and so when I came back from Iraq, that moment where I said, well, even before coming back, when we were there in Iraq, we were moving so quickly that it was hard to keep the supplies up with us. So our rations and everything were usually very tightly controlled. We had limited rations. And literally, when we were sleeping outside in the ground, literally sleeping like in our grave. We would dig a hole in the ground, what we call a foxhole. We'd dig a hole in the ground, and we would literally sleep there, maybe about a foot deep, and we would sleep there, but literally like sleeping in our graves. And subhanallah, the people of Iraq, they were so kind, they were so, here we are, invading their country. They invited us to stay in their house. They offered us food from their table to eat with them. They offered us water to drink. Um, Here we are, a country of infidels invading their country, and they mentality and the sympathy to see we didn't have and offer us their house, offer us their food, offer us their water. For me, that was, it's beyond comprehension. I think about the example, like for example, Mexico. If Mexico invaded the United States, would Americans say, Mexican army, here, stay in our house, here, eat from our tables, here, have water, drink? Would we have that kind of mercy and hospitality? So it's something you can understand. It's beyond comprehension. And so it really got me curious, like, who are these people? Who are these Iraqis? And I really wanted to know more about them. So I figured, all right, what's the best way than to learn about them through their religion? Because if you learn about their religion, it will explain their laws, it will explain a lot of their customs, their courtesies, their mannerisms. It will explain the society as a general. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm really curious. Like, I want to learn more about these people. They're just incredible. And so when I was there, I actually bought a Quran that had the Arabic and the English. Of course, I didn't know at the time that I really wasn't supposed to have a Quran with Arabic, but alhamdulillah, it was the qadr of Allah. But I had this Quran with English, and so I actually read the entire Quran while I was in Iraq in 2003, 2004. And I was like, mashallah, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. Like, wow, what amazing people. And I never really thought about Islam as a religion for myself as much as I thought of it as just a religion, because I had come from such a strong Catholic Christian family that the concept of changing a religion, you don't do. You don't think about changing a religion. It's just not something you do. Nobody even thinks about it. So at the time, it was like, wow, this is really beautiful. Like, now I understand why these people are so amazing. And I loved it so much that they had these beautiful prayer rugs. And, they were just so beautiful, so ornate, so colorful. It was like, wow, so I was there. I actually bought about 10 or 15 prayer rugs while I was there in Iraq and brought them home with me. A lot of them I gave away as gifts and things like that. But little would I know, 20 years later, that Quran that I bought and those prayer rugs that I bought, I would be using today to read from, and I would be using that prayer rug to pray on. Subhanallah, the qadr of Allah. Subhanallah. Allahu Akbar, it's just incredible. So when I came back, right, I said, I've used up all my life. I got to do something. So I became very, very involved with community outreach, youth outreach, helping getting involved with the nursing homes, doing a lot with the church, a lot of the high school youth, doing activity programs with them. I became a religious education teacher, started teaching the religious education program in church. And then I started becoming, I got even more involved. I became trained and certified as an acolyte, as a Eucharistic minister, in what they teach is giving the body of Christ, giving the bread, giving the wine, and reading the Gospels in Mass, and setting the altar, serving the priest during the Mass. And for me, I was like, it was something that I really enjoyed, that I felt like Allah Subhanahu wa Taala was really calling me towards, and so it was incredible experience. I did a lot with an organization called Catholic Heart Work Camp, and we take high school youth from all across the United States, all over. and we'd have thousands of the youth would come together, and we'd go to different cities, and we'd just go out to all of the elderly, painting their houses, cutting the lawns, doing the gardening. We'd have some people going out into the daycare centers, helping out the daycares, some going out to the food pantries. And it was just really an incredible experience. Like, what, this is what I want to do. Like, I really want to get out there in the front, helping people, spreading the message of Jesus, and really serving God and doing what Jesus called all of his creation to do. And so with all this, it touched me so much that I was like, you know what? I decided this is the career that I want to make for the rest of my life. So I spoke to a couple of the head priests in my area, and they're like, even one of them today, I'll never forget, he's like, Mark, you are so positive and optimistic. He's like, you need to be a priest. It's like, you put me to seriously. Like, you really ought to consider going to priesthood and going into seminary and becoming a priest. He's like, I got nothing on you. So, to hear that coming from another priest, it was like, okay, well, I guess this really is what God's calling. So I spoke to a couple of friends of mine who were priests and head of the diaconate, head of the church. And so I started going into the program for the diaconate to become ordained as a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church. And this was about 3 or 4 years ago. And what happened, though, is in my studies and everything, there was something uncomfortable in my heart, something that didn't sit well. Because whenever I listened to the Gospels, I would always listen to the Gospels, and I would listen to them, and I would take time to reflect on them, and to reflect upon what the Gospels were saying, what the Gospels were preaching, what were the teachings and preachings of Isa, Jesus, what he was saying in his messages. And throughout all of these Gospels, the one resounding message that I heard was La ilaha illallah in every one of them. And him performing and doing these actions and nowhere saying, I'm not God. If he wanted to do something, he prayed to God. Every action he did, he always went to the Father. He always went to the Creator. And so it seemed troubling in my heart. It really started troubling me a lot. And then as I took more time in reflection, thinking about the idols and the idol worshiping, I'm thinking saints. And we're praying to saints. And if you ask somebody, they say, yeah, well, we're not really praying to them, but we're praying through them. We're praying to them, but we're asking them to pray to God, to be an intercessor for us. And I'm like, these are just ordinary people. Like, this is just like you and I. There's no divinity. There's no prophethood. There's nothing special. This is just a person who did God's work in life. It doesn't mean they're a prophet. It doesn't mean there's yes, it's great to remember people who do good work, but it doesn't mean that you remember them to the point that you make an idol to God. You start venerating, you start worshiping this person. That's when it becomes a problem. And it was starting to eat me inside. And I was thinking about, well, what about all these relics? We look at the cross, we look at all of these objects, and it's like, it really started troubling me in my heart a lot, to the point where I was thinking, how am I supposed to be going into the priesthood, into the diaconate, being a minister of God, preaching and proclaiming God's word, but not believing in my heart what I'm preaching? And that was at the moment saying, there's something wrong here. There's something not right. How can I be preaching something that really deep inside I don't believe? And it's not right. It's not right. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to those who I preach to. And subhanAllah, I had at the time, I had a really good friend who was Muslim. She was a sister Ayunda Privati. She was from Indonesia. And so we'd been talking one day, and because I had a couple friends who were Muslim, but I really never spoke much about the religious aspect. And it was just one day we were speaking, and for whatever reason, I mentioned the fact that, I'm really uncomfortable with these teachings. Like, here I am, I'm doing all these studies, I'm supposed to be going into the priesthood, but I don't believe it in my heart. And so she asked me, was like, well, can you explain? Can you tell me more? And so I explained to her about like all my feelings and everything. She was like, well, that's exactly what Islam teaches. Islam teaches, that Jesus is not God. Jesus was a prophet, the Messiah promised to the Jews, but he wasn't God. God is one, God is unique, God is alone. Um, and so until that point, I always thought of Islam, I always knew Islam, but I never thought, as a religion, but I never thought of Islam as a religion for myself. It was just a religion. And that was the first time that it really touched me deep, saying, wow, I think you're right. Like, my beliefs are the beliefs of a Muslim. These are the beliefs that I've had all of my life. Believing in Muhammad as the prophet of God, believing God is one alone, believing Jesus is not God. Don't get me wrong, he's special. He did incredible miracles, but he did those miracles with God's permission. Because without God's permission, he would not be able to do anything. And so it really caught me deep in my heart, like, wow, my own personal beliefs are actually that of a Muslim. But I actually had a lot of fear too. One, I had never been to a masjid, so I have no idea what a masjid's like. I had never been to a Jummah, so I have no idea what Jummah is like. I know what they say about Isa alayhi salam, but is that really what they say about Isa? Do they really, maybe the book says one, but everybody does other. It's like, well, what do they really say? I want to know the truth here. So she invited me to go with her brother and her father, and we went down to the Islamic Center of Ocean County in New Jersey. And I went with them, and mashallah, it was so beautiful. I will never, for the rest of my life, forget the khutbah, because I had no idea what he was saying in Arabic, but I can tell you the translator was saying it in English. Subhanallah, they were speaking about the beauty of this world, the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us through the trees, through grass, through water, how we need to respect and preserve every little drop of water on this earth. Because at any given moment, that water could come away and we could be a barren land, a wasteland. And so we have to have so much respect. The trees, they clean the air for us. They give us oxygen. They remove the pollutants from the air. They give us shade. They give us the material to build our homes, to build our shelters, to build all of this. How important it is to respect all of the beautiful blessings that Allah has placed upon this earth for us. And for me, I thought of all the sermons I have heard in my entire life, I have never heard a sermon so beautiful about respecting the preciousness of life and the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never in my entire life of hearing unimaginable number of sermons and preaches and things like that. Never have I heard so beautiful. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so after that, I went one more time with their family to Jummah, and it was just, we went to a different masjid, and that masjid they gave the khutbah in English, alhamdulillah, so I could understand it. But it was beautiful. It was just absolutely beautiful. I was like, wow, this is amazing. But I was like, well, what about Isa? What about Isa alayhi salam? And so I actually went on the internet and I did some research. And believe it or not, the website WhyIslam, they actually had an article on Isa alayhi salam. Little did I know that years later I'd be doing so much work with WhyIslam. But they had a beautiful article on Isa explaining him, his importance, his role, his history, just about Isa alayhi salam. And it said, okay, you know what? You respect Isa? Okay, I can take this. Don't touch Isa. You touch Isa, I'm out of this Islam thing. But you preserve Isa? Okay, I'm on board. We're good. So I was like, it kept all of what I believe about Isa true. It kept in fact, it actually beautified Isa more it beautified Jesus more than any Christian teaching and tradition. It just made Jesus so much more beautiful in his portrayal. So I was like, wow, you know what? Yeah, I really want to learn more, like about Muhammad, about the history, and about this. So she says, okay, well, if you're really serious about wanting to learn more, go to your local masjid, speak to the imam, tell him you want to learn more about Islam. So I said, okay, it's not a bad idea. So what I did is I decided, all right, went back home. I went on Google. I said, okay, East Brunswick, New Jersey, Islamic Center, Mosque. And I said, all right, Islamic Center of East Brunswick. I was like, oh, okay, great. This is East Brunswick. Oh, yeah, I know there's this great, big, beautiful masjid there. Beautiful, ornate, has this whole decorations and everything fancy like this. I was like, yeah, I know exactly where I'm going. I'd never looked at the address that was on the thing. But it was like, okay, and it said on the website, okay, help us, we're getting ready to build a masjid, make this nice masjid. I was like, oh, okay, website just must be out of date. Okay, must be an old, because I know this masjid, beautiful masjid, is still new. So it's okay, maybe they just didn't update the website. I was like, okay. So I go to the masjid, I go there, and there's nobody there. Empty. Not a single person, right? So I was like, oh, I'm like kind of disappointed. Like I was actually really looking forward to talking to someone. So I go inside, the door was open, and I look, and there's this really beautiful, nice, ornate interior, and all of this crazy, and I'll never forget they had something that looked like a squatting toilet, like a demonstration model of a squatting toilet right there in the entranceway. I was like, all right, well, this is interesting. I don't know who puts a toilet in front of the entranceway, but okay. So I was like, all right, there's no there. I guess somebody was doing a sales demo or something. I don't know. So I go back, and they had this nice little banquet hall, and I'm like, hello, anybody here? And I hear a voice. Can I help you? Who is it? I'm like, oh, I'm here. I'm interested for prayer and everything. Sorry, we're closed. Nobody's here. Come back later. Sorry. I was like, oh, okay. Well, all right. Thank you. And so I left, and I was like, I was so downhearted. I was so wanting to learn about Islam and speak to somebody. And I did the one thing that I never do. The one thing I absolutely never do. I went back to the website. I went back to Google. I went to their website, and I say, it had the box for comment. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna comment because I'm so disappointed. Like I really wanted to talk to somebody. So I say, hi. I went to the masjid today, and you know, it said that you had a prayer at this time, but I went there. There was nobody there. I'm really kind of hoping that maybe I could talk to somebody. Learn a little bit more. And so what happens is later that evening, a couple hours later, the sun had already set. It was starting to get late. My phone rings. I was like, "Who's this?" I was like, "This had some funny telephone number, name, something. I don't know. Looked like I don't even know. There's you look at some of these Arabic names, Pakistani names. You're like, whoa, who's Jamal Takbir? Who's a what's her? I'm like, okay, who's this? I'm like, hello, can I help you? He's like, hi, yeah, I'm brother so and so from the East Brunswick Islamic Center. I just so happened to see, as I just logged into the website, which is like, I never log in there, but this just happened to be the one time I just happened to go in there, and I just happened to see your comments. I was like, oh, okay, well, thanks be to God, oh, one time you answered. And so I told him, it's like, yeah, I went to the masjid and everything, and there's nobody there. He's like, really? It's like, but I was there. It's like, yeah, no, I was there. It was like, there was nobody. It was the ghost town. There's a one Sorry about that. I think I had technical difficulties here. Can you still hear me? Uh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Hmm. Oh,
Can you hear me now,
there you
Mark?
go.
Can you hear
Okay, I
me?
can hear you now. Yep,
Okay,
yep.
perfect. All right, some technical difficulties, but we're good to go.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so
So last thing I
I'm
heard was basically when he called you and he said, strange, there was nobody there. And you was like, yeah, I went, nobody was there.
okay. Yep, yep. So went there. There's nobody there. So they said, okay, well here we're going to be praying Isha here in just a little bit. He's like, if you want to come over and join us. So I said, okay, yeah. So he gave me the address, and so I go there, and I go into the building, and there's like one or two guys inside, and me. I walk inside. I'm looking around. I'm like, there's only like two or three people here. I'm like, okay, well, where do I go? What do I do? I'm like, okay. And all of a sudden, this guy, this really tall, skinny guy, he's got this big beard like this. He comes over. He's like, can I help you? You look a little lost. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here for evening prayer. And I'm thinking in my back of my head, I'm like, all right, exit door's right here. Okay, all I gotta do is quickly move this way, go there, exit, and like peel out of this place. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, okay. He tries to pull any like AK-47 stuff on me, like, okay, good, boom, exit over here, thank you, goodbye. Right? And he's like, and I'm like, so I'm like thinking like this. I'm like, yeah, I'm here for evening prayer. Like actually terrified. And so he's like, oh, okay. He's like, are you here for Shahada? And so the guy who spoke on the phone, I didn't hear his name.
Uh-huh.
I just knew it was a guy on the phone. And he called me and said, come to the masjid. So he says, are you here for Shahada? So I said, you know what? I couldn't remember his name. His name must be Shahada, right? So I'm like, yes, I'm here for Shahada. And he goes, MashaAllah! He gives me this big old hug. He's like, brother, welcome. I'm like, oh, thank God. I don't have to do like karate chop this guy and run out the door. It's like, oh, thank you. I'm like, yes, I'm here for Shahada. He's like, MashaAllah. Oh, he's like, everybody, this guy's here for Shahada. I'm like, yes, I'm here for Shahada.
You like this guy Shahada is
Shahada,
famous, huh?
Shahada. Like, Shahada's a movie star, man. This Shahada, he's a rock star. I'm like, yes, I'm here. I'm like, show me, where's Shahada? Where's Shahada? Yes. And so, subhanallah, right? So here I was thinking Shahada was the guy's name. And so what happens is this really tall, thin guy comes up, bald hair and everything. He's like, hi, I'm Brother Tariq. I think we spoke on the phone and everything. And I'm so glad to see you came to the masjid here. And, I'm not too sure, like, if I understand right, I think they said you were here for Shahada, like you wanted to do your Shahada. And it's like, when you take your Shahada, and he's just talking and like I did not even a chance to speak, right?
Yeah,
So he's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, and so he's like, when you take your Shahada, that's when you proclaim your faith that you want to become a Muslim. You say that there's there's no deity worthy except the one true God, and then Muhammad and Rasulullah is a prophet messenger of God. And he's like, are you sure you want to go ahead and do this today? I'm like, yes, I want to go ahead and do my Shahada today. I want to say become a Muslim. And then I stopped like, oh my God. Oh my God. What I just said. Like, I start grabbing, like, how do I take those words back? Like, no, I didn't just say that. I didn't just say that. But subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put those words in my mouth saying, yes, I want to become a Muslim. I want to become a Muslim today. I want to take my Shahada. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I just say?
Subhanallah.
Subhanallah. Allah just put those words in my mouth before I could even see. Like, there's no thought. It was just, they came out. Like, this was about 5 minutes late. My brain didn't even comprehend this. So like, what did I just say? And then, of course, now that I said that, I'm like, oh, great. Well, what do I do now? I'm like, how do I get out of this? I just said I want to become a Muslim, take my Shahada. Like, how do I back out of this? I'm like, and when he did it, it's like, oh, congratulations, this is so good. It brings me into the master. He's like, yeah, this is Mark, he's here today. He's going to pray with us. We're going to teach him. He wants to do a Shahada afterwards. And I'm like, oh man, this is just digging deeper and deeper. Like, can't get out of this one now, right? So we pray Isha, and after Isha, right? Of course, I have no idea what I'm doing. He's like, don't worry about anything. Just look what I do and follow me. Simon says. Simon says, bend over. Simon says, sit down. Just follow me, right? So it's like I was thinking, this is great. This is like a game of Simon Says. We're good to go. I can do this. Simon says, stand. Simon says, stand. So afterwards, he calls me forward, and sure enough, there in front of the community, he's introduced me to the community, everything, and subhanAllah. Decided, you know what? This is the will. This is what God wanted me to do. This is what Allah had intended for me. To take my Shahada, become a Muslim. And so I said, you know what? I've been fighting God all of my life, trying to do what I want to do, trying to do the things that I thought was good for me, and not listening to what God was actually calling me to do. I said, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do this. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do that. And I've been doing this all my life, and it was always just problems and difficulties and hardship. I mean, you know what? I just got to surrender, give it up to God. If this is what God's got to do, I just got to do what God wants me to do, and do it to the best of my ability. And so I said, okay. I stood there, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasul. And subhanAllah, what a life-changing moment that was. And it was just so incredible, and especially for me, having come from such a background of really owing so much to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for being here today. Had an incredible drive going into the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going into the diaconate, doing all the religious outreach. I said, you know what? This is who I am. Like, I'm going to continue this path.
MashaAllah.
And so, alhamdulillah, so now it's a blessing of Allah, because now I can continue those studies, except instead of going into the diaconate, to the priesthood, now I'm just going the Islamic path of Imam, Sheikh, studying Islamic online studies at Mishkan University. SubhanAllah, what an incredible group. Now out there doing Dawah, doing activities with WhyIslam, Grassroots Dawah in New York, IARA Canada up in Toronto. I join those guys every now and then. And it's just what an incredible experience it is. Like, there's nothing more amazing in this world than just being able to get out there with the people, speak about the message of God, but being able to speak about God in such a way that you have peace and tranquility in your heart, that you know what you're speaking is the truth. It's not, do you believe this or do you think this? It's no, I know this. Like, I know it's the truth. I don't believe it's the truth. I know it's the truth. Because if you say you believe, then that means maybe there's an element of doubt. So there's no doubt. There's no belief in it. It's no. You know the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know the message of Isa alayhi salam. You know the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You know these messages. And so, mashallah, it's just been the most incredible journey of my life. And it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps surprising me every moment. There's always something new that I never expect. You know, even like this, speaking with you here today is something never in my entire life I ever would have imagined.
MashaAllah.
But you know, here, this is where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has placed me now at this point in time.
Alhamdulillah.
And you know, just being able to offer this, you know, and just being able to inshallah give people inspiration, like to get out there, to do more, to say more, to be more active. You know, it's that's one thing a lot of people born Muslim don't understand because they've had the Quran their entire life. They've
Mm,
had Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam their entire life. They've
mm,
had hadith all of their entire life. They had seerah, they've had sunnah all of their life. They don't know what it's like to be without. And
mm.
so somebody who has spent their life without this, I have such a jealousy for somebody who can just recite Quran and recite it so beautiful. Little girl Maryam, right? She's, you know,
Yes.
with 10, 12 years old, 13 years old,
Yes.
recites the Quran beautifully. Has the
MashaAllah.
whole, she's a half of the Quran, has the whole Quran memorized. Here's a young child, has it memorized and recites so beautifully. I'm like, SubhanAllah, you're just a young child. Here I am, I'm 40 years old, and I'm trying to get past in alhamdulillah, in alham, in alhamdulillah, in alhamd. Oh, my wife, she's constantly correcting. Ha, ha, not ha, ha. I just said ha. No, she said ha. I said ha. No, it's ha. Come on, give me a break. So I'm constantly getting corrected. I'm like, so for somebody who's born with having that blessing of the Quran, the Arabic language, subhanallah,
MashaAllah.
for
Tabarakallah.
those born Muslim, you don't know how special something that you have. You don't understand how beautiful, how precious that is, and how much you need to cherish that. You need to cherish that Islam. You need to. It's like a little chicklet, like a little baby chicken, a little like chip chip chip, right? You
Mm.
want to take that little chicken. You want to hold it so delicate because it's so small, it's so fragile. You want to hold it in your hand with the most care. You know, that is Islam. That's how you want to treat Islam. Is love it is something so precious and
MashaAllah.
fragile. You know, so it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing to get out there, and it's something that I can only pray that more and more people become involved in, especially in the West, especially in the United States, because you know, you see so much of this Islamophobia on TV, on the news, you know, and you look at the way people are reacting to Muslims, like, well, what do you expect? You know, what have you done to
Mm,
correct people's understandings? You
mm,
know, you pray quietly, you stay quiet, you stay to yourself. Well, of
mm,
course, if you're going to stay quiet in secret, what do you think people are going to think of you? You need to get
mm,
out there. You need to show people. You need to teach people. You need to
mm.
educate people. It is
MashaAllah.
so critically important not to
MashaAllah.
be afraid to say, I am a Muslim. I am an American Muslim. And for me, alhamdulillah, being in the military has been such a blessing because even in the military, you know, a lot of people say they curse the American military. They say how terrible it is. We hate Muslims. No. The American military is the most protective of Muslim rights of any Muslim military.
Mm,
Only in the United States military can a Muslim grow their beard. You
mm.
can't do that in the Egyptian military. You can't do that in any other Islamic military.
Subhanallah.
Only in the United States military can you wear your beard. You can wear your turban. I can
Oh,
practice. I can pray Jummah. I can pray every Salah, every Fard, and I can pray every Sunnah in the military.
Subhanallah.
I have absolute. In fact, there were a few times when I was working when I was working in the office. If it was time for prayer, the entire office would stop
Mm.
just for me, so I can pray, so they
Wow.
wouldn't be a distraction. The whole office would stop what they were doing. Everybody would stay quiet for those few minutes, just so I could pray, and
That's
then
amazing.
afterwards, then we continue as normal. That's how much respect the military has.
That is amazing.
So when people say, "Oh, they hate Muslims and this and that," no. What you're seeing is nothing but politics and misinformation. And
Mm.
the people who say the military is against Islam, those are the people speaking who have no education about the truth. They're just speaking based on what somebody else heard, what somebody else thought. They're basing on opinion. They're not
Mm.
basing anything on fact.
Mm.
So I can say, subhanallah, it's been an incredible, incredible experience. In fact, just a lot of times, like the military base, we have masjid on base. We have masjid right there. We have Air Force, we have Navy, we have Marines, we have Army, everybody. We pray. And subhanallah, it's so beautiful. There are times I would walk with my turban, proudly, my jalaba. I would
Mm.
walk around the military base in turban and jalaba with my beard.
Subhanallah.
And don't get me wrong, a lot of people would look. Don't get me wrong. I won't lie. I got a lot of really weird looks sometimes, like, who is this guy? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
But
hoorah!
subhanAllah, when I was walking around base, you don't know how many people would come up and say, Salamu alaikum. I said,
MashaAllah.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. He's like, so nice to meet you, brother. I'm like, nice to meet you too. You're a Muslim? Yeah, I'm Muslim too. I was like, really? I had no idea you're Muslim. Oh yeah, it's I try not to look that way, because it gets too much attention or this or that. I was like, subhanallah, I was amazed to see how many people are in the military and on the bases and involved in the government who are Muslim,
Mm.
but they just stay quiet about it. They don't want anybody to know about it. But
Subhanallah.
subhanallah, it was just so eye opening to see so many there. And it was the last 2 years of the military because I just retired. The last 2 years, not once did I have one person make any negative comment.
Subhanallah.
Not one single person.
Subhanallah.
Absolutely everyone of the thousands and thousands of people in the military that I interacted, because I was with the Joint Force headquarters for the entire state of New Jersey, the Joint Force headquarters for the military. And not one person ever had anything negative to say. It was only, wow, mashallah, that's amazing. Good for you. We're so glad to see you. You're doing an amazing job.
MashaAllah.
So it was just incredible. It's just been an incredible journey. Incredible journey.
Barakallahu feek, Mark. Alhamdulillah, the journey was, mashallah, it's amazing listening to your story, mashallah, because this is my first time listening to it as well, alhamdulillah. I really enjoyed it, inshallah ta'ala. For those who are listening, I'm just going to cover some points, that throughout your story that I was taking notes on, inshallah ta'ala, kind of as a little summary for those who may have come on late as well. Mark, mashallah, he grew up in a Roman Catholic home, around 10 years old, in geography class, mashallah. He was doing Middle Eastern studies, saw a picture of the Kaaba. He was like, I want to go. His teacher broke his heart, told him no, only Muslims can go, mashallah. He had that desire from that time. He said he always believed, mashallah, that Muhammad was a prophet. Um, and of course that in the 80s and 90s it was difficult to find books, and I remember that, subhanAllah. I accepted Islam in the late 90s, 98, and I remember going to the library trying to find books on Islam, and it was just very little resources, almost none. And it was in the college, in the university library, subhanAllah. Or the information about Islam was like really twisted, subhanAllah. So it's a blessing, what I mean, that you were able to find resources back then as well, subhanAllah. He mentioned it. I remember going to the library and could not find anything. Subhanallah. He went on and got EMT certified in high school. He had a couple of moments where he crashed his car into the pole. It was a reflective moment for him. Subhanallah. I can tell you, I had 3 of those moments myself prior to Islam, and I shouldn't be here either. But mashallah, qadarallahu ma shafa'ala. Allah, blessed us to continue to be here, alhamdulillah, and get to the point where we worship him, alhamdulillah. By 18 years old, he was contacted by the Marine Corps. I remember receiving that phone call as well, Mark. And the guy was like, we need people like you. I was like, nah, you don't need nobody like me. I was like,
Yep.
I told the guy, I was like, I know you don't like your job. I was like, I'm not coming over there. Subhanallah. Because my friend was actually trying to get me to do the buddy system with him. And I was like, no, nah, I'm okay. I'm not doing the buddy system with you. You're going alone. But we also learned from Mark, as we learned from Juan Pablo in an interview a few days ago, about the beautiful self-discipline that they were able to learn in the army, and overcoming fears, and mashallah, able to face the world head on, inshallah ta'ala. So mashallah, they prepared him with some beautiful traits, alhamdulillah, that he still carries today with him, alhamdulillah, mashallah. 9/11, working in Verizon, mashallah, seeing the smoke from the buildings, and wondering what's going on and what's happening. I remember 9/11, I was actually sitting in a classroom in the University of Medina when they came into the classroom and told us that the buildings were hit by a plane, and we were like, get out of here. There's no way buildings were going to run into a plane in New York City, in America. You're crazy. It never happened. And then we went to McDonald's afterwards. And because we didn't have TVs on campus, we went to McDonald's. It was the only television that we knew that we could find. And we turned on the news, CBS or NBC, one of the two. And we actually saw, the constant replay of the planes hitting the building. And it was like, oh my God. And then going to the internet cafe that would take about 20 minutes just to get going, to call home to make sure that everything was safe, subhanAllah. Some scary times and, some difficult times. And I was overseas during those times, so I can kind of relate with how tense it was overseas and over here in the U.S. afterwards as well. And then in 2003, mashallah, Mark went to Iraq, and subhanallah, Mark. One of the amazing things is that our brother Juan Pablo, also who was a Marine, he was also stationed in Iraq, and he stated the same exact thing that you stated. Subhanallah, he said that he was invited to eat, he was invited to drink, he was invited to stay in their homes, and he said it was some of the most beautiful experience that he ever had. And they had actually gave him a Quran all in Arabic. He said, he opened it up. He's like, well, okay, I can't read this. Zipped it up and put it in his pocket, and he's had it ever since. SubhanAllah, he accepted Islam thereafter. But he told the same exact, recounted the story the same exact way, saying, SubhanAllah, that he ran into these Muslims, and it was just something beautiful, the interaction he was having. When he thought the same thing, I'm going to go to this place and I may die, what I mean? I'm probably going to have to kill people. And then he says, all of a sudden you find all of these beautiful souls that you never thought that you were going to meet, subhanAllah. And then hearing the adhan in the desert, I can bear witness to that that's one of the most beautiful sounds that you can hear, subhanAllah, in the desert, inshallah ta'ala. Then Mark went on, he bought a Quran, mashallah, read the Quran and began to read he read the entire Quran, which is, mashallah, impressive, alhamdulillah. I kind of did the opposite. When I was first told about Islam, I went back and I read the entire Bible for the first time ever in my life. And subhanAllah, reading the Bible for the first time ever in my life, I found so many questions that took me, just like you, kind of back to kind of asking the why, and seeing the same thing that Jesus was calling to, worshiping God and the Father, and he elevated him and he never elevated him. SubhanAllah, that when you really take that journey, hold on, we got lost here. What happened? Okay, here we go. Bismillah. That when you really take that journey of reflection, that you're able to, mashallah, really ponder and find the truth ultimately, right? Find the truth about Jesus when you read the Bible to that extent, and you reflect and you ponder upon the Bible to that extent. And then, fast forwarding, Mark, he went on to become ordained, and, he went on to study to become ordained, and that's where he ended up finding, questioning himself about his faith. And then he had his friend, mashallah, and this is why Muslims is so important for us as friends with non-Muslims to, always talk to them about Islam, because you never know where a person may be in their journey, right? You never know where a person may be in their journey. And this friend all of a sudden mentions to Mark and tells Mark, well, this is what the Muslims believe about Jesus. And he finds, mashallah, something amazing that you said, Mark, is that you found even a more beautiful account of Jesus in the Quran, subhanAllah, and in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we want, and this is one of the things that we tell to our non-Muslim listeners, go back and read, Surah Al-Ma'idah, the fifth chapter of the Quran. Go back and read Ali Imran, the third chapter of the Quran. Go back and read Surah Al-Maryam, right, where all of these, the chapter of Mary, where all of these, mashallah, beautiful accounts of Jesus is being mentioned. Because many times they think and believe that we don't believe in Jesus, but, subhanAllah, Jesus is mentioned so beautifully in the Quran. And then he says he went to the first masjid, his first khutbah, like many of us. The first khutbah was in Arabic, and you're sitting there like, okay, wow. And alhamdulillah, it sounds like you had a good translator, Mark. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. The guys that I remember back in 1998, the translators, they were not the best. Allah bless them for, mashallah, the effort that they would put in. But the imam would be going and he'll be motivated, and the translator, he'll be like, and the imam says, and then all of a sudden the translator will go quiet, and the imam is still going, and like he's just like, it seems like he's spitting fire. You're like, oh my God, this khutbah seems amazing. And then you're looking at the guy like, Why are you not translating? What's going on? I'm missing so much. Alhamdulillah. And then, alhamdulillah, many years later, because that was for many years later now in the States, we can find sermons in the English language. Alhamdulillah, that was a beautiful change eventually to now giving sermons in the language of the people so that the people can understand. Because I can remember the first 10 years, that was difficult to find, subhanAllah. Um, and then the going to the masjid. I think a very important point. He mentioned that when he first went to the masjid, he found that nobody was there. The guy kind of told him we're closed. Come back later. I think it's so important, Mark. And maybe you'll agree with me that every masjid, every center should have a greet and meet team where a person that comes in and they want to inquire about Islam and they're a new Muslim, that they're greeted. Someone meets them at the door. They're greeted. They're shown around. They're talked to. Their questions are answered. Because way too often people go through that same experience that you went through. They kind of go in and it's kind of like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening here? I remember my first time in the masjid, everybody was speaking Arabic, and I'm sitting there like, what did I do? How did I accept this religion where nobody speaks English? I can't understand anybody in this building. You know what I mean? And if it's fearful, you know what I mean? Because now you're just like, you start second guessing yourself and doubting yourself. Did I make the right choice? Did I not make the right choice? Alhamdulillah. But at the same time, I had a good experience where we were actually had someone who meet us and greet us and introduced us to the imam, and what I mean, and then the imam began to engage us and have class with us, right? Not so much the community itself, but the imam himself. He dedicated time to us, and that helped us to develop, mashallah, and to be able to go on to study and the likes, inshallah ta'ala. um, and then the hilarious story of Shahada. I absolutely love that. Subhanallah. Are you here for Shahada? Yes, I'm here for Shahada. Alhamdulillah. Which again, it shows us that and this is you're talking about not too long ago, right, Mark? Not
Oh
too
yeah,
many,
this
not too many years ago. It's recent. So it goes to show us again that within our centers, we really need to develop a structure, inshallah ta'ala. We really need to develop a structure so that, these incidences that could have been a very bad, it could have been a bad turnout, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, imagine if Tariq didn't show up and they would have just brought you to the front and it's like, okay, just repeat after me, Ashadu, Ashadu. You say they're like, whoa, what's going on here, right? Subhanallah. So, I think it's from these, alhamdulillah, we learned some good lessons that we can kind of give out to our centers to mashallah really develop a team. Also, you mentioned to be an inspiration, and that the born Muslims, especially more so, and I think more so when you say born Muslims, I'm thinking more so like the migrant Muslims who, mashallah, have come to this country. Not so much so the ones who have been born in this country, right? Because they kind of have this same struggle that we went through being raised in America, but kind of the migrant Muslims that you said they've had the Quran, they was raised with the Quran, they was raised with Islam, they was raised knowing Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they never had that missing in their life for the most part, right? For the most part, some may have had it missing, but for the most part, the majority of them have had that in their life. And subhanallah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because today, I put up a post, which some may have found offensive and some didn't, and it probably caused some controversy. But I said, I was happy that I accepted Islam through a convert because it gave me a different perspective, a different lens on things, inshallah ta'ala, versus accepting Islam through a born Muslim who may not understand the struggles of the journey that we had to take to get there, inshallah ta'ala, because they've had this all of their life. So they don't necessarily understand how difficult it may be to, now accept this new thing, change your life around. Your family may not understand, especially, how was it with your family, Mark, when you accepted Islam? You never told us.
so it's been a mixed response.
Okay.
There's some family who's accepting on the surface. There's some who it's a mixed. It comes as a shock to some. Like my mother's really struggling. My mother's struggling with it.
Okay.
Because, she's become. She left the Catholic Church to become one of these born again Christians,
Okay.
Methodist, praise and worship, and her philosophy is that the only salvation is through Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is the only way for salvation.
Yeah.
And so she's really struggling hard,
Yeah.
really struggling
Yeah.
with it. Um,
And that
you
was
know,
my
for
point. And that was my point today to the born Muslims, telling them, listen, you don't know what it's like to have a parent who's not Muslim. You don't
yeah,
know what it's like to have a brother or sister that's not Muslim, uncles and aunts who are not Muslim. You don't know what it's like to have 99.9% of your family not be Muslim. That when they pass away, you can't pray salat to janazah upon them. That when they pass away, you can't make dua for them. That you don't know what that is like. And it's important for them to realize the difficulty of this journey, inshallah ta'ala, and sometimes not take offense to these comments, but kind of say, okay, subhanAllah, what if I need to put the shoe on my foot? I can empathize with you, but the reality is I'm really never going to know what that feels like. You know what I mean? I know me myself, being Muslim now 23 years. My mother kicked me out of my home when I accepted Islam. Alhamdulillah, she accepted Islam 22 years later. Alhamdulillah, she's been Muslim now for about a year and a half, 2 years. But that's difficult. It was difficult, I mean, going through that journey, because that is your mother. You love her. That is your father. You love them. That is your family. You love them and you want the best for them. You know what I mean? So subhanAllah. But you have to continue being an inspiration for them, as you mentioned, Mark. You know what I mean? And we have to continue being an inspiration for them. And more importantly, you mentioned that we need to be out there showing the people what Islam is, right?
yes,
Because so subhanAllah, a lot of the born Muslims, I tell them this all the time. We get this comment from the non-Muslim that they say, "What have you done for our country? What have you done for our state and our city? You've come here, you've got a great education, you've earned the American dream in terms of finances and homes and cars, and you can send money back to your country. But what have you done for us here?" And I think that that's the missing component with us as Muslims, that we need to start to get on the offense and really start, mashallah, demonstrating and illustrating Islam. And like you said, you immediately went out and started doing good work. SubhanAllah, you joined the WhyIslam team, mashallah. You've been out with IRA, you've been out, mashallah, you're studying Islam now. You've gotten busy, mashallah. Every time, all I know about Mark is that, mashallah, he's everywhere, mashallah, doing a whole bunch of things when he's here in the US, mashallah, trying to do as much good as he can, Allahu Akbar, mashallah. And I think that's important, to wear Islam on your shoulder and allow people to know that, mashallah, we are proud to be Muslims, alhamdulillah. And it can be, I'm a Caucasian American Muslim, I'm a Spanish Latino American Muslim, I'm a Spanish Muslim, you know what I mean? I'm an African American Muslim, I'm Muslim born from a Muslim country, alhamdulillah, whatever it is, but that you wear that proudly, alhamdulillah, and you show that to the people, inshallah ta'ala. There's a question here for you, Mark, that came in.
yeah.
Um, and I think maybe it says, thank you for sharing your inspiring story. But I have a question. As a member of the military, how did it feel when you were being stationed at an Islamic country? Did it ever make you feel like you were fighting your own brother? Thank you. But I don't think you were Muslim when
So I can say,
when you were in Iraq, right? You weren't
so I can
Muslim.
say, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. In my time, since having become Muslim, I've not had to be stationed overseas in a Muslim land. Alhamdulillah. The majority, everything that I've done has been in the United States, and has been from a humanitarian standpoint, helping out when they had the floods. Um, just all of the national emergencies, the natural disasters, things like that, stateside. So, Alhamdulillah, is the blessing and mercy of Allah, I've not had to encounter that type of problem.
MashaAllah.
Um, and that's, and I don't even know what I would be able to say to somebody having to do that, other than just, that's a lot of dua. That's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
dua. A
SubhanAllah.
lot of dua and a lot of istikhara and
I
a
had
lot
I,
of stuff.
I had a friend, Bilal. He was actually in the first Gulf War. And
Right.
I remember he told us that, subhanallah, he said that, when they would get those calls, the sirens would go off at night, telling them that missiles were going to come, for everybody to kind of get in the foxholes and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and get ready. He said he would basically just turn sideways and continue sleeping in his bed. And that,
Mhm.
the sergeant or whoever was in control would come back and like, what are you doing? We told you to get outside. He was like, listen, man, qadar Allah ma sha fa'ala. If I'm gonna go, I'd rather be in the bed than in the foxhole. I'm gonna stay here. I'm staying here comfortable, inshallah.
Make a
I'm not
quick
going.
fast.
Subhanallah. But and I had another good friend as well that was in the army during the first Gulf War as well. He was Muslim as well, African American brother, and he said it was difficult. It was difficult. He said he found it difficult, because that's the last thing you want to do is harm your Muslim brother, or or sister while you're out there, and subhanallah. But he said it was very challenging, and alhamdulillah, he said him as well. He didn't have to, mashallah. He didn't get into any encounters where, alhamdulillah, he had to ever shoot his weapon at a Muslim. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. I say that's when it comes to war, it is the most painful. It is the worst thing. There's no reason why any country should ever go to war with another country. It's all a game of politics.
Yes.
That's all it is. It's just a game of politics, and the military is nothing more than a bunch of pawns in a game of chess. We're just the pawns, and when you play with people's lives like that, it only causes death, destruction, hatred, animosity. War is the absolute worst possible thing anybody can ever possibly do. There's no reason for it. There's so many other things that can be done, so many other ways of diplomacy. War should never be an option. War should never be an option.
And I thank you for clarifying our misconceptions about the Marines and the military, and how mashallah they treated you mashallah with respect, and allowed you to practice freely, even walking around in mashallah your jalabiyah, alhamdulillah. And I'm base. I probably wouldn't walk around with the jalabiyah on base either, but alhamdulillah, mashallah, Allah gave you that fortitude, mashallah, and that light to kind of wear Islam on your shoulder, alhamdulillah, and mashallah. Every time I see Mark, I always see him in the jalabiyah, mashallah, and then the imam, alhamdulillah, walking around proudly, demonstrating his Islam. So, alhamdulillah, thank you for clarifying that for us as well. And then lastly, alhamdulillah, Mark, inshallah, ta'ala, appreciate your time. Amazing as well. You ended up finding a pamphlet online about Jesus from WhyIslam, and then years later you end up coming on board and being part of the WhyIslam team.
Yeah.
How has that been for you? And what can you tell our viewers about WhyIslam and the work that gets done at WhyIslam?
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. It's Dawah is such an critical part of being a Muslim. It's aside from being a shaheed, it's the second highest position, the highest responsibility that a person has. The greatest reward. It is so important and critical, and it's such a beautiful blessing. It's just the activities like WhyIslam does, going into Times Square, going out into Jersey City, going out into these rural areas, and so many people. There are times where we'll have 5, 10, 15, almost 20 shahadas in a single day. People are just ripe for wanting. They have a thirst. They have a desire for it. And without organizations like WhyIslam, these people would be thirsty, and they would be dying thirsty, because they need somebody there to quench that thirst. They need to quench the thirst of Islam. They need to quench the thirst of their religious ease and peace of heart, mind, and body. It's so critical, and so it's such an amazing thing that just getting out there, getting into the communal street fairs, when they have street fairs going on, going out into the public areas, going out to the raceways, going out to into the city, just going out and educating people. So much of it are so many questions, a lot of which stem from the misconceptions that we see on CNN and Fox News. Why is it okay for a man to beat a wife? Well, no, it's not okay to beat a wife. It's so many questions like these. Why is a woman not allowed to drive? Well, nobody said a woman's not allowed to drive. So many things. Why does a man make it mandatory for a woman to wear hijab? Well, no, I'm not saying it's mandatory. It's God who says, it's a woman's supposed to cover. But and it's educating people, and especially for sisters. Like, I could not overemphasize the importance of sisters getting out and doing dawah, because that's one area in Dawah we are severely lacking. We have lots of men giving Dawah to men, but when we have women, Christian women, Jewish women, atheist women coming and asking questions, we need sisters to be able to answer those questions. Because me as a man, if a woman asks me about hijab and I explain hijab to a woman, it's not going to be taken the same way as a sister wearing the hijab
That's right.
explaining to a woman about hijab.
That's right.
So, one of the areas that we're so desperately, we need so many more sisters to get involved, especially speaking with other women, speaking to the women, educating them, because the more women you educate the entire family. Because a woman is a central pillar of the family. You educate
Absolutely.
her, she educates her children, she educates her husband, and I guarantee you, educate her, her husband's not going to bed happy unless her wife is happy. So, yeah, it's women are such a critical part of this whole process of dawah. And we just need so much more as a whole, even just getting out there and just going out. And it doesn't take much. And there's so many ways to get involved in Dawah. It doesn't mean that you have to have a conversation with every single person. Just handing a pamphlet. That pamphlet in itself speaks for itself.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you can do on the backside. Just helping the people, like if you have an office, just helping them put stuff together in the office for other people to go out there. Every little bit helps so incredibly much, every little bit. And it's when people ask you like, well, I don't have knowledge, I don't know about this, I don't feel I'm ready. So many, I don't know how many times, and I hear this from Muslims, I don't feel I'm ready. You're born with Islam. What do you mean? You've had education your whole life. I got 2.5 years here. Come on, give me a break. What do you mean not ready? Oh my,
MashaAllah.
convey, even if it's just one ayah.
No.
And if you don't know, alhamdulillah, just say you don't know. Take
That's
the
right.
person's name, take their number, and say, okay, I'll get back to you. Let me go speak with their mom. Let me go get the answer for you. And then get back in touch with that person and let them know. And even for me, accepting Islam, all it took was, would you like to come join us for Jummah? That's all. Invitation.
That's
All it took was an invitation. I was ready my entire life to become Muslim, but it took an invitation for me to actually accept. I needed that invitation. And that's one thing that I think people really need to get out there and do, especially when they have these open masjid days, setting up a dawah booth at a masjid, having an open masjid day, setting up a dawah booth, inviting the community, going door to door, listen, we're having an open house. Would you like to learn about Dawah? Hi, it's Ramadan. Go house to house. Hi, it's Ramadan. I'm a Muslim. Would you like to learn about Ramadan? Would you like to learn about Islam? Would you
Yeah.
like to come see what it's like?
No.
Invitation. That's all it takes is an invitation.
MashaAllah.
It's so important.
Alhamdulillah. So you heard it here, inshallah ta'ala. Why Islam, inshallah, is a staple here in the community, inshallah ta'ala, especially in the US. The pamphlets that we put together, mashallah, and put out are of extreme importance. Alhamdulillah, now the people, mashallah, they can go online and they type Why Islam, right? And mashallah, the website comes up, and you have all types of information from about life and death, about belief in Jesus, about belief in Mary, Malcolm X, women in Islam, Ramadan, the about the Creator, about God, Alhamdulillah. So we invite all of you, inshallah ta'ala. If you don't know about Islam and you're searching about Islam or want to know more about Islam, visit our webpage at whyislam.org, or feel free to call us at our free 1-800 number 1877 Why Islam, and we have someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, ready to take your phone call, inshallah ta'ala, and answer whatever question you may have. And for our Muslim brethren, inshallah ta'ala, we ask you to support this cause. Support this cause. We are doing work on your behalf, inshallah ta'ala. Inshallah, this is the work of the prophets and the messengers of inviting people to Islam, clarifying the doubts, clarifying the misconceptions. And when we do that, alhamdulillah, we have many more beautiful stories and many more beautiful people like Brother Mark, inshallah ta'ala, who end up coming into Islam, inshallah, and being pillars within Islam as well. So alhamdulillah, even for our new Muslim brothers, as you mentioned, you, mashallah, even though you're new, share that journey, share your passion, inshallah ta'ala, and you can always be an inspiration to somebody. And for our born Muslim brothers and sisters, inshallah ta'ala, alhamdulillah, the same for you. Just share the inspiration that you were born with, inshallah ta'ala, the gift that Allah gave you at birth, alhamdulillah, of the Quran and Sunnah, and inshallah ta'ala, you may impact the life of somebody. Brother Mark, inshallah ta'ala, jazakallah khair for coming on. If you have any quick final comments, inshallah, before we close out, the floor is yours, inshallah.
No, Jazakumullah khair, Jazakumullah khair. No, I could not be more grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity, and it's, I've had people, some people say, oh, well, maybe just looking for attention or this and that. And it's so important that we always keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts and our minds at all times in everything when we do.
Yeah.
Always keep Allah in mind, Our entire existence here on earth is nothing more than to give praise and worship to Allah. It's not for me. Our life here is, the snap of a finger. But the eternality of Jannah is forever. So it's so important. Just always, everything that we do, when we want to speak to somebody, think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first before we speak. When we want to do something, think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before we actually go ahead and do it. Islam brings so many beautiful du'as, so many beautiful sunnahs into life, and myself, I was just trying to one of the sunnahs I was reading in the hadiths of Bilal, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he did Miraj, he heard the footsteps of Bilal in front of him, and when he came back, he asked Bilal, "What is it that you are doing that I hear your footsteps in front of me?" And he said, "I'm not doing anything. It's just when I make my wudu, I offer two rakas, I do 2 rakas salah for Allah."
No.
And just that simple, make a little salah after you do wudu, putting him in front of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So many beautiful sunnahs. You hear of the woman who was a sinner, right? But she took off her shoe and went to the well and filled it with water to give water to a dog, an animal that is despised in Islam. And that, of all of her sins, was enough to expiate herself of all of her sins and allow her to enter into Jannah. Right. So, there are so many beautiful sunnah and so many beautiful things in Islam that it brings into life, into humanity. We need to act upon them. We need to really live those sunnahs. We really need to start not quoting hadith, not quoting this, not quoting this seerah, that seerah, quoting this hadith, that book. No, we need to start living it. Stop worrying about quotes, who quoted what, who said what. Start living it. Just live Islam.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Excellent advice, Barakallahu feekum. And we'll end with that. Live Islam. Wonderful advice to end on, inshallah ta'ala. Live Islam, be Muslim, and just show the world what Allah has given you. And inshallah ta'ala, we can help to continue to illuminate the world with good. Don't forget, brothers and sisters, WhyIslam.org, 1877 WhyIslam, for any questions you may have. Thank you so much, Brother Mark. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you in your journey.
Ameen, ameen. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.